What is good, everybody? Juliana Page here. I know I'm coming to you in like interesting form. Freaking love this hat. I'm obsessed with white and gold, so I found a hat and I love it. Anyway, I'm in kind of like my nighttime flow, but I knew that it was urgent that I get on here and share this word. I was starting to see a theme throughout the day. And I know in the past how I've really struggled with this and how I can see the enemy try to rear his head in my life and how I can use authority now to overcome, right? But I really want to share this with you. So the title is always a giveaway. And you can tell from this title that I'm not who I thought. Another way to say that is I'm not who I think I am. So everything that you think, you don't have to agree with. And a lot of times, I'm sure we wouldn't publicly announce this, but a lot of times we're thinking things that are totally not in alignment with who we are. So for example, the best way to kind of get behind that is if you projected a movie screen of all of your thoughts, would you be proud of them? Would you actually approve of them? There's been somebody who actually said a quote too that if we spoke out loud the things that we think about ourselves and the things that we tell ourselves all day, if we spoke that out loud to somebody, we'd be put in jail, right? Because some of the things that we think about and some things that we come up with are not good. They're not righteous, noble, praiseworthy, lovely things to be thinking on. So you are not your thoughts. It's really important to separate your identity from what you think. Separate your identity from what you feel, separate your identity from your experiences, separate your identity from your mistakes, separate your identity from what happens in the future. You are not any of that. You are so much greater than all of that. So really where a thought like that or a revelation that you're not who you thought you are, sometimes that can be emotionally devastating. So for example, we did a life group call. We do a public life group. It's held in a private group, but it's open to anybody that's drawn to that or wants to be a part of it. It's every Monday at 8 p.m. I share about it over on Instagram. There's a private Facebook page. It's Spirit-Filled Real Talk. So if you want to hop in there, you're welcome. But we do a private life group every Monday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we basically show up and we're in receive mode. Even myself, I have no clue what God's going to reveal. I just get out of the way and I allow myself to just be a vessel. And it's amazing. We pray. We've got some meat of whatever God wants to do. We have some fellowship time and then we pray and bless everybody. And it's been so amazing how God shows up and really reveals things. But yesterday, we covered a topic really about control. And I know I used to serve in recovery, and it was a 12-step Christ-centered recovery program. And I believe it's the very first step says, realize I'm not God. Case in point, if you realize that you're not God, a lot of things will change in your life, right? But why that one's so important is a lot of times we try to control. A lot of times we try to run our own lives, lean on our own understanding, navigate in our own strength and efforts, right? And strangely enough, we become manipulators. We push our own agenda. We want to have our own way. We force our will onto other people, and it can get messy. So I'm not who I thought I was. You might have thought, in this example, you might have thought that you were somebody that identifies as kind, as generous, as servant-hearted, as intentional, as loving, as all of these beautiful things, right? But it takes real courage to actually look at, but are you though? And is that behavior demonstrating or reflecting, representing who you are? Or no. And as painful as it can be to recognize that in how I showed up there, that's manipulation. I am demonstrating manipulative behavior. Are you a manipulator at heart? Probably not, but you've got to be able to recognize how you're showing up and the impact that has on other people. So we were really talking about freedom, strangely enough, and how freedom is essentially being able to act however you want, but also being accountable for that action. And who the sun sets free is free indeed, meaning God set you free, yes, but use your freedom not to go and sin and go and look like the world, but to love. To love. And there are boundaries, there's parameters, there's a structure so that you can do that well. Because when you are in alignment with love, when you are following the path of love, or when you are really in the flow of love, that's why I say God's vibes matter. When you are operating in that, you're not going to do all of this other messy, negatively impacting things, right? So at any rate, when you realize that I'm not who I thought I was, that can be in a positive way, that can be in a negative way. But the main point behind that message is that you are not what you think. However, what you think affects how you feel, and it affects your behavior and how you show up in the world. So it is really important to think about what you're thinking about, to test what is going on, like to test the spirit behind things. Like, what is your motive behind doing that? Is it fear? Is it love? Like, why are you showing up that way? You can usually tell by the fruit that it produces. So for example, if you're operating in fear and anxiety and control and frustration and anger, you're going to see the fruit of that also. You're going to see more anxiety. You're going to see more frustration. You're going to see more anger. You're going to see things not working out for you, right? You're going to see that because that's what you're focusing on. That is what you're thinking about. And what you think about, right? Whatever you focus on, it grows more in your life. So you're not who you thought you were, good or bad. However, it's important to think about who you are so that you can really believe correctly, because be it unto you as you believe, be it unto you according to your faith. So as you believe, so be it, right? If you get that, like if you really get that and let that hit your spirit, you will do some work to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This isn't work actually that we can do on our own. We can't literally walk out this path on our own, this spirit-led path on our own. There's a reason why it's spirit-led. Okay, so anyway, the message behind the message on today is about anxiety. Anxiety. And anxiety is, in my opinion, and I used to call it future tripping, where I'm constantly visualizing the future, but I'm visualizing it in a negative way. I'm visualizing it without God in it, right? I'm visualizing like the worst case scenario so that I can come up with all the plans that I need now so that I'm ready, so that I can brace for that, so I can handle it when I get there, which is whack, totally whack. However, if you have, like myself, experienced a lot of disappointments, been betrayed, have abandonment happen, have rejection happen, have a lot of discouragement, and things just not go according to plan, and things really be rocky and turbulent for many years of your life, then you start to anticipate that, which is not how God has you wired. Again, why God's vibes matter, right? God has you wired to joyfully anticipate good, because every good and perfect gift comes from God, and God has a good plan for you. Jeremiah 29:11, he promises to give you a future and a hope. His plans are not for evil, right? So if I believe God and if I believe what God says is true, then I have to divorce my attachment to picturing all of these evil scenarios, to visioning my future without God in it, because God promises me that nothing can separate me from his love, right? And that he will be with me. Whatever I go through, he will be with me. And talk about security and safety and provision and peace and everything that you need. That should be it, right? So I had a conversation with a dear friend today, and it was around the current issue holding him back and how it's really preventing him from making a lot of good progress in his life. And it happens to be anxiety. So he's not able to sleep at night. His mind is just constantly racing. And then he gets up and there's like all these things that he needs to do. And then he feels scattered and it's just messy. So it feels like you're always catching up, almost like you're on this hamster wheel and you're going really fast all the time, but are you really ever getting anywhere? So I'll share some things that were really powerful and radically shifted him on today. And then I had another dear friend reach out randomly, but not randomly, similar story, just really feeling like there was a lot of fear coming up. There was a lot of suffering, really like warring, psychological warfare, which is emotional, and it's affecting your soul, which is your mind, will, and emotion. So there's a real battle going on the inside of you. And if you've got that going on, how can you show up and really be effective in whatever you have to do outside of you, whether that's a job, whether that's be a parent, whether that's be in a relationship? How do you actually show up and steward those things well if you've got this war going on in your soul? Okay, so case in point. So to both of these individuals, I prayed for wisdom, and I also shared some strategies that have worked for me, because ultimately this is something that you can work out personally with God. But there's a couple of things I want to share them. So first and foremost, it's to not partner with anxiety. So you've got to start partnering with God's truth. And that means you can't be casual about it. You can't let it rule you. You can't let it take you on a ride anymore. You literally don't engage it. But like replacing a bad habit, you've got to have a new habit. You've got to have something to replace it with. So to me personally, I've got to get more word in me so I can identify anything that doesn't look like that. I shared on my Spirit-Filled Real Talk with Juliana podcast every Saturday. This past Saturday about how I recently on my home cleaned the outside windows. You know, you get that cleanser that you can attach to your hose and you can like spray down the windows. And I had never done that at this house before. I just never had it on the to-do list. So it was just never something that crossed my mind, right? And so my rationale, I think, because when I sit in my office, I redid my office. And when I sit in my office, I literally am looking out a window. So I think that's when I'm starting to notice things that I wouldn't otherwise notice. But my point with this is I love how God can turn even the most mundane thing into a spiritual lesson. So as I clean these windows, of course, what I'm going to look for is, does it leave streaky residue? Did that cleanser work? Like, how do the windows look, right? Do I have to like rub them down with something else and do it old school style? Like, how does this look, right? And it's interesting because the lesson here is when you start taking care of things, when you start cleaning things up, you start to notice everything that's not supposed to be there. So if there's a streak there that's not supposed to be there, if there's like bird poop on the window that's not supposed to be there, if there's something on the window that's not supposed to be there, I'm going to see it, right? Especially if I'm looking at it every day. So take that and put it on your soul, right? If you are thinking about what you're thinking about, if you're monitoring your emotions and what emotions you live in, a majority of the day, are you mostly living in fear? Are you mostly living in anxiety? Are you mostly living in resentment and unforgiveness? Like, what are the main emotions that you're experiencing every day? And then check out your behavior. How do you show up? Because if you're thinking really crappy thoughts and you're feeling crappy all day, your behavior is probably procrastination, depression, inaction, comparison, judgment, criticism, right? Like, let's be real. But if you are thinking on God's promises, if you're renewing your mind every day, you're renewing, letting Holy Spirit work with you and getting a right spirit renewed in you, if you're letting God purify and do a refining process in you and in your hearts, right, and keeping your heart right, then you're going to notice you're going to have peace when otherwise circumstances could have derailed you in the past. Or you're going to have creativity and wisdom in times where, how did you even come up with that, right? Or you're going to have solutions and strategies to resolve challenges where you would have just given up before, right? Different. So Hopefully that analogy is helpful. But I'm going to give you 5 things that I do daily. If you go to julianapage.com, I made this into a document too. So you can go over there, you can subscribe to my email list and download that document. But 5 things that I do every day, here they are. Number 1 is personal development. And I personally level up on this because I am in a service profession. So the more that I'm giving, the more I know I need to feed myself. Otherwise, what am I really giving? Okay. That's my logic, right? It's also my wisdom and experience. So personal development for me, it's prayer, it's journaling, it's getting into a devotional. There you see the white and gold again. This is the God's Vibes Matter devotional on Amazon or julianapage.com. But I get in a devotional, I get in the word, I study, I journal, I pray, kind of take a look at what's going on inside of me so that I'm not living with a ton of blind spots. And I really just open myself to receive what God has for me, because his mercies are new every day. And he always gives good gifts, whatever that might be, whatever I need, right? So I spend time doing that. I also do personal development on whatever it is that I am experiencing resistance in, or that I am led to get new knowledge in. A lot of times this is around communication. I'm obsessed with it. I love storytelling. I love the character journey, the hero's journey. I love helping people walk out their own breakthroughs. So I read a lot about mindset, what mentally strong people don't do. I read a lot about relationships and keeping your love on. I read a lot about creating cultures of empowerment, a lot of cool stuff. And I just almost view it like a research paper, but I view it and I read it not just to read a book and finish it from start to finish, but to really learn new skills and integrate those into my lifestyle. So personal development, number 1, I say push play in a workout. So I do virtual workouts at home and I absolutely love it. It's changed my life. I'm somebody that was an athlete and a pretty intense one. I did gymnastics and track, so very intense training involved, very competitive, also team oriented. And then I would just run for fun. And working out from home has changed my life because I really wanted to do something that's sustainable long term and not just like high impact, like running can be all the time, and not like 2 hours at the time like we think that we have to do to actually get results. So I really wanted to challenge myself and keep myself healthy and fit to do what I'm here to do. So I find that it's really easy just to push a workout and stream it. So I do that every day. I then focus on getting optimum nutrition into my body. So I make sure that I have superfoods and the right supplements that I'm eating, in addition to eating clean, drinking a ton of water, and trying to avoid, I call them like nutritional red flags, avoid caffeine, sugar, processed things. I don't happen to like meat or dairy. So I've got to also be intentional about making sure that I get nutrients that I otherwise might be lacking because of that. So being intentional, just really focusing on getting optimum nutrition into my body. And I eat for energy rather than just pleasure. And that seems to work for me. Then, how many is that? 3? So number 4 is then serving. So that inevitably happens with what I do, but I intentionally look for ways to serve and go out of my way. And I ask God to highlight people to me that I can show up and give a word of encouragement or bless in some kind of way. And then number 5 is gratitude, and focusing on gratitude, focusing on all the things that are going well, focusing on all the ways that God is providing and God that is showing up, focusing on everything that I can possibly think of that I'm grateful for, and having an experience of it. So a lot of times I will just sit in the experience of gratitude. So it could even be a time when I was younger where I felt just God show up in a radical way. It could be one of the favorite experiences of my life. I'm so grateful that I felt that and experienced that. It could be something that I'm so looking forward to experiencing and starting to experience that. But I really get into it versus just making it a list. So those 5 things: personal development, pushing play on workouts, getting optimum nutrition into my body, serving, and gratitude. Between those 5, I got a solid foundation to stand on and just to add other things. So I find that causes me to be effective in the private foundation manager leadership role that I play. It helps me be an effective master coach. So I coach people for a living. I love it. It's how I'm wired. It's how I'm designed. And that helps me stay strong and open and a really good receiver so that I can be present and give whatever God has in these calls and in these moments that I share with different clients. I'm also really creative. So when I'm writing and that sort of thing, it really allows me to have the energy, to have the focus, the mental clarity. I really don't do well when I'm foggy or when I'm tired or when I'm overwhelmed. So I find that having those elements in my day, they don't have to be the same time every day, but just doing those things helps me stay strong. And then it also is a way to really assess if I can take on more and what I can and can't handle in the season that I'm in. So that's one huge thing. Now, what was a common element for both of these friends was that having a schedule was really, really important. So when you are anxious, essentially you are picturing the future. You're picturing everything that you have to do and how you can't possibly do it by yourself. There's no way. And it's true. You can't do it without God. Apart from God, you can do no good thing, right? So that would be the first thing. Make sure that you get God back in your life. And create a schedule to make sure that this is a priority. And you want to prioritize your life around God versus the other way around. So having a schedule that you can stick to. I know this is a wild concept, but this radically changed my life because I came from a family of OCD kind of structure, which I kind of resented it to a point. Like the kind of families where if you're, 15 minutes early, you're already late kind of a family. So at any rate, I resented that structure. And then later in life, I learned that I was really creative when I was able to kind of step out of my upbringing and start really exploring who am I, what are my talents, what are my abilities, what am I here to do? When I started exploring that, I realized that I'm really creative, that I'm wired quite differently than where I came from. Not good, bad, right, or wrong, but huge. And I found with creativity, you would think just having freedom and, just do whatever you want. When it flows, it flows. Like you would think that that would be really effective. But I've found, and I know this to be true in all of the people that I've worked with, that having structure is what actually creates the freedom to create. And it's what allows that to flow. Like there's going to be days where the creativity doesn't flow, but you're still working within that structure. So here's what I mean. Having a set time that you're going to wake up and a set time that you're going to go to bed, and having not just a morning routine, but an evening routine. Like I call it bookending your day. Okay. And in the middle, if you bookend your day in the middle and throughout your day, you can kind of see how God is working and you can create these little breaks that you need in the middle of the day. But having those bookends is huge as far as being able to focus and also reflect and really be self-aware in a non-judgmental way. So no guilt, no shame, no condemnation. That's not of God, right? But really be aware of how did today go? How am I feeling? How is my thought life? Right? And really be able to prepare and build momentum and create a good setup for you to be successful, right? So in the morning, having a set time that you get up every day, and you'll eventually train your body to do it to the point where I've been waking up without my alarm lately, which is a beautiful feeling versus hearing like, wah, wah, right? So, and there's many alarm clocks that you can use too, so that doesn't have to be your like initial wake up experience. But anyway, you've got to find things, right, that work for you. So the first thing is just having structure in the first place. So getting up at a certain time, whatever that is for you. Then have the activities that you need to do in the morning, because as your day goes, they don't happen. So those two things for me happen to be spending time with God and working out. As my day progresses, I get involved in other things and those things just don't happen. So I spend time with God. Then I'm able to, work out and shower and get all of me time done, right? So that in the other little segments, maybe I have like a lunch window, then I can like read some personal development, or I can go for a walk, or like these different things where I can still, right, care for myself. But there's going to be a lot of blocks now that are devoted to other people. So I make sure that I'm up early enough, at least I would say 2 hours before your schedule is dictated by other people in a lot of ways. Be up at least 2 hours before that. So have quiet time with God, work out, structure my day around the things that I juggle, right? And make sure that there's little gaps and breaks, even if they're 15 minutes, right? And then at nighttime, it is unwinding and really releasing things so that I can hit the bed hard and sleep soundly, because sleep is so, so important. So usually for me, that's writing, that's reading, that's listening to worship music, it's turning the lights down lower, it's taking a bath. There's just activities that you learn and your body will start to respond to it too, that this is how we slow down, right? And the great thing about that too is once you get these routines, even if you travel or even if you're in other places, you can still implement these things that work for you. So those are really important things that I recommend doing. Now, I will say, if you are anxious, usually it means that you've shut God out of your life somehow. So in addition to having a schedule and making time to seek God and pray and take care of yourself, you've also, if you're not hearing God, you've got to turn down the noise. So I know in a season where I was led to build a relationship with God, I needed to know if I could hear God for myself. I needed to understand, what does it sound like to hear from God? What is the still small voice thing? What does it mean for the word to be alive and active for me? How does this all work? When I pray, do I pray out loud? Like, I just had questions. So to experience God for myself, when you think about any kind of relationship, I needed communication and quality time, both of which I was not making time for before, right? So I could have still found an excuse or a reason why I wasn't going to do that, but I was so broken and so ready to experience God in my life because I was straight out of options that I was all in. You have my attention and I'm going to give you a year, right? It's another good point. Make a timeline for things too, so that you can start seeing that you do show up for things. You do keep commitments. That does something as far as self-control, self-discipline, confidence. It builds integrity momentum for you, and really just an awareness of your ability to keep promises with yourself, which only increases your confidence and your ability to show up for other people. So big thing. You're welcome. Okay, so anyway, if you aren't hearing God, and usually you're not if you're anxious, because being anxious and being fearful, again, it's looking at your future without God in it, and it's rehearsing all these scenarios and all these things that could go wrong, and that's not what God has for you, right? He's got good plans for you, and you're not partnering with them because you're not connected. You're not tuned in. God's vibes matter, clearly don't matter to you right now. So how do you fix it? I say turn down the noise. So you've got to turn down everything that's louder than God's voice in your life, because God is not on a megaphone. He's not screaming you down to get your attention. He's subtle, still, small, cool, calm, collected. The most awesome person to spend time with, right? And there's nothing negative about him. Strangely enough, we find ways to run. Crazy, right? So what does it mean to turn down the noise? No TV. Well, in my case, it was no TV. It was no radio. So rather than the radio, I would listen to sermons, because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So I was making sure that I was hearing the word of God at every opportunity, particularly if I didn't know it and if it wasn't in me. How is it going to come out of me if it's not in me? So I was trying to, like, osmosis style in the beginning, get as much word into me as I could, in addition to the prayer and study and all that other stuff, so that it was starting to form a relationship and a story with God, right? A history with God. So no radio, no TV. I stopped all social activities aside from serving and being in this ministry, right? Because I believe service was important, so that I was not going to be self-centered, and that I was not going to let my pain and being a victim or any of these things dominate me. I was going to get out of the way and serve. That's the quickest way to get out of your stuff, is if you serve other people. So that had to stay, but doing an assessment of anything that's bringing noise to your life. So no TV, no radio, no environments that really have no return on investment and that are not advancing my future, getting me to where I want to go. Removing some people from my life, and it'll be clear, because if you remove them, they won't care and they'll just keep it moving. What else? Removing any books or materials that I'm reading that's like worldly practices and reinforcing this like force and push and works and pressure and perfectionism and achievement and all this stuff that's not helping me hear God, because I can get busy being busy. So removing anything that's a potential distraction, even if it looks good. And what else? Cleaning up my diet, because sometimes if you're eating the wrong things or if you're eating too much of the wrong things and just really not monitoring that, it can affect you hormonally. It can make you mentally foggy. It could really run you down. So really paying attention to that, because that's noisy stuff too. It's all things that are creating static in your connection with God, whatever that is for you. So I shared some examples, but that was something that was really, really important. So I do a couple things. Also, working out was big. So you can see I've made those things a part of my lifestyle now. And they've always kind of been a part of my lifestyle, but not like a consistent foundation. I hadn't really built them in a way that worked for me. So I really had to keep experimenting until I found what worked for me. But the first thing first was turn down the noise so that I can be a fine-tuned instrument that can receive and hear from God. Okay, so that would be my recommendation, is make a list of the things that are creating noise in your life and start turning down the noise, so that in that time, instead of running to a friend, you run to the Word and you go to the secret place. Instead of venting, journal and talk it through with God. Yeah, you might feel like a weirdo at first. It's normal. And that'll become something that's really good in the long run, right? Start making declarations and prayers. Start praying, right? Start really working the Word, because the Word works if you work it, right? Start really living as if the Word is true. So those would be my things that I would share on today, is really come up with daily structure that helps you find freedom within it and that helps you feel centered and secure in it. Then turn down anything that's louder than the voice of God or that's preventing you from hearing God. Give yourself timelines and deadlines or different check-ins so you can see how you're doing. Bring some accountability into your life if you need a friend that's walking with God that can be a support, that can check in with you periodically, that you can give updates to. That will really help you stay accountable. And then pray. This is not something that you can do in your own strength or with your own willpower. It's not. We can't live the life of a believer, a faith-based life, apart from God. We can't. So we need to learn how to walk by the Spirit, how to walk in the newness of life, how to put on our new man every day rather than activating this old one that only has dead things connected to it, right? It's dead. You want to walk in the wonderful new, and that's something that God constantly reveals more and more how to do based on your maturity and where you're at spiritually. So if you start spending time doing that, you'll find that connection is effortless and easy and beautiful and fun and something that you can look forward to and delight in. And you can really operate in the world in a totally different way. In fact, you can even influence the world rather than being infected by it. So I hope this message blessed you. It felt really timely. I'm going to go get back into my nightly routine here that I promised you is helpful to do. But if more information like this is helpful, a couple of resources that you can check out, julianapage.com. There's a lot of coaching services over there based on the level that you're at. There's a self-mastery course. You can tune in to Spirit-Filled Real Talk every Saturday. The podcast link is over on that site. And you can also follow me for some daily inspo over on Instagram at Miss Juliana Page. Yeah, and then if you have any requests for videos or things that would be helpful to hear a riff about, feel free to send me an email with those ideas as well. All right, so if this message blessed you, let a girl know, but also copy the link and share with a friend. You never know who's really battling with a lot of internal stuff and could totally use a message like this. So make sure you do that. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you